The afternoon sun burned hot over Abuja when David paused, his hand gripping the door of his sleek white Mercedes. The engine purred softly, waiting. The villa's courtyard was still, the high walls keeping out the city's chaos. He turned sharply at the voice roar, urgent, cutting through the air like a blade. "Don't get in that car," the young woman shouted from the entrance gate. "You'll die if you do." She looked like she'd crawled from the shadows of the streets. Her faded wrapper was ripped at the hem, smeared with red earth and sweat. Her hair stood wild, uncombed, framing a face etched with desperation. Bare feet planted firm on the gravel. She pointed at him, eyes wide with terror. For a heartbeat, the world froze. Not the chauffeur behind the wheel, not the guards at the post, not even Clara, standing poised beside David in her emerald designer dress, diamond earrings catching the light, her painted lips curved in a practiced smile that now faltered. David blinked, confusion turning to ice in his veins. What? His voice was steady, but his mind raced. Who was this intruder? How had she slipped past security? Clara laughed lightly, but it rang hollow. "David, ignore her. We're already behind schedule." Her eyes narrowed at the girl, sharp as thorns. But David didn't budge. The stranger's warning wasn't frantic, rambling. It carried weight, certainty. "Why?" he demanded, facing her fully. The girl swallowed, unflinching. "Because your wife put something in there. It'll explode when you drive off. She wants it all, your empire, your fortune." Clara's laugh turned shrill. "This is ridiculous. Guards, remove this lunatic." David raised a hand, silencing everyone, his gaze locked on the girl. She was young, maybe 20, skin dark and weathered, but her eyes held no greed, only fierce resolve. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. "Ada," she whispered, "and I'm not lying. I heard her planning it." David's stomach twisted. He glanced at Clara, her composure cracking, jaw tight. "Explain," he said to Ada. Clara stepped forward, voice rising. "David, are you seriously entertaining this trash? She's probably begging for handouts." But Ada pressed on. "Last night, behind the abandoned site on Amadou Bello Way, where I sleep, I overheard her on the phone. Then she met your manager, Victor. She told him to rig the car, promised him control once you were gone." David's world tilted. Victor, his right-hand man for years, and Clara ... the woman he'd built his life with. "Proof," he said, voice low. Ada pulled a battered phone from her pocket, screen cracked like a spiderweb. Guards tensed, but David waved them off. "I recorded it," she said, hands shaking as she played the file. The audio crackled, whined, distant Okadas, but the voices were unmistakable. Clara's. "Make sure it's set right. David drives alone today. No survivors." Victor's laugh. "Tomorrow, you're the boss widow, and I'm CEO." Clara's face drained of color. She lunged for the phone, but David caught her arm. "Enough," he growled. Her eyes met his, pleading turning to panic. "It was a mistake," she stammered, collapsing to her knees. "The devil. Please, David." He dialed the police, voice breaking but firm. "Officer Ahmed, send a team. Attempted murder. My wife." Clara screamed as they cuffed her. "David, I love you. Forgive me." He turned away, numb. To Ada, he whispered, "Thank you for saving my life." Tears brimmed in her eyes. "I couldn't watch it happen. I've lost too much to silence." Inside the villa, David offered her food and clean clothes. She ate humbly, revealing her story. Orphaned at 12, surviving on streets, no one to trust. "I just acted," she said. That night, police called. Victor arrested at the airport, fleeing to Dubai. Confessions poured out, payments, plans, greed. David sat in his study, staring at wedding photos, heart shattered. Ada knocked softly. "Sir, rest." He smiled weakly. "You've given me a second chance. Stay here. No more streets." Her eyes widened. "Sir, ... you deserve it," he insisted. The trial gripped Abuja. Courtroom packed, Justice Okoro presiding. Evidence mounted, recordings, bank trails, CCTV of Victor tampering with the car. Clara wept on the stand. "I was blinded by ambition. Forgive me." Victor hung his head. "She promised power. I was weak." The judge's voice boomed. 25 years each for conspiracy and attempted murder. Justice served. Clara's screams echoed as they led her away. David watched, tears silent. Outside, reporters swarmed. "Relieved," he said, grateful to Ada, who risked everything. Months later, Clara collapsed in prison, stomach pains severe. Rushed to hospital. She whispered regrets. David visited Sonia by his side. "I forgive you," he said, holding her hand. "Heal," she sobbed. "Why? Mercy heals us all." Clara recovered, released on parole for good behavior. David gave her 15 million naira. "Rebuild," he said. She started a bakery in Kaduna, teaching women about choices, calling herself Anti-Mercy. Ada thrived. David sponsored her education in finance. She graduated top of her class, joining his firm as accountant. Staff admired her humility. 2 years on, Ada visited Clara. They hugged, sharing tears. "You saved more than him," Clara said. "You saved me from myself." Back at the villa, under evening stars, David and Ada sat in the garden. "Regrets?" she asked. "None," he replied. "That day led me to truth and you." Their bond deepened, a family forged from ashes. The Mercedes, once a death trap, now symbolized survival. 5 years slipped by like quiet rain. The David Chukwuemeka Foundation now ran 12 free schools and 3 hospitals across the north. Every gate carried the same plaque, built by the man who was meant to die in a white Mercedes, saved by the girl who had nothing but a cracked phone and a loud voice. Ada rose fast. At 27 she was already chief financial officer of Chukwuemeka Group, feared in boardrooms for her numbers and loved in the streets for her gentleness. She still went every Saturday morning to the abandoned site on Amadou Bello Way where she once slept. She carried jollof, rice, new wrappers, and school forms. Some nights she sat on the bare ground with the new homeless and told them, "I was you. One day somebody will stop for you too." David, now 52, had grey at the temples but laughter in his eyes again. He never remarried. He said quietly one evening, "God already sent me the only partner I needed." She just came wearing rags. Clara's bakery in Kaduna had grown into a chain called Second Dawn. Every loaf carried a small sticker, "Taste Mercy." She trained widows, paid school fees for prisoners' children, and spoke in the evenings, taught evening class on choices that almost killed me. Once a year, on the anniversary of the day the bomb was found, she closed the shop and fasted. She said it was the only way to remember how expensive greed is. Victor never left Kirikiri. He died in the 3rd year, sick and silent, writing letters he never posted. The last one, found in his cell, was addressed to David. "I sold my soul for a chair that was never mine. Tell Ada thank you for stopping me from becoming a murderer." Then came the morning that changed everything again. Ada was in the foundation's headquarters in Matama when her secretary knocked, eyes wide. "Madam, there is a small boy outside. He says he must see you. He's been here since 5 a.m. Ada stepped out to the reception. His cheek carried an old burned scar. His eyes were David's eyes. He looked up at her and spoke in a voice too old for his body. "Auntie, my name is Daniel. My mummy said if anything ever happens to her, I should find the woman who saved my daddy's life and give her this." He held out a sealed envelope that had turned brown with age and sweat. Ada's heart stopped beating for a full second. She took the envelope with shaking hands and opened it right there. Inside was a single photograph and a short letter in Clara's handwriting. The photograph, Clara thinner, smiling softly in a simple ankara, holding a newborn baby. On the back, in blue biro, "Daniel Chukwuemeka Janar, born 6 months after I went to prison. Your son, David. I never told you because I did not want you to feel forced to save me again. But he is yours. He has your eyes, your stubbornness, and your kind heart. If I die before he is grown, please love him the way you once loved me when love was still clean. Thank you for the mercy that let me become my whole life. Clara." Ada looked up. The boy was staring at her, waiting, afraid she would send him away. She dropped to her knees in the marble reception, pulled him into her arms, and cried the way she had not cried since the streets. That same afternoon she drove straight to Kaduna, with the boy asleep on the back seat, clutching the nylon-like treasure. She found Clara in the bakery, apron dusted with flour, teaching a new batch of women how to knead dough. When Clara saw Ada standing at the door with the small boy holding her hand, the wooden spoon fell from her hand. Clara's knees buckled. She crawled the last 2 steps and gathered her son into her arms for the first time in 9 years. Ada stood back, tears rolling, letting mother and child cry themselves empty. Later that night, the 3 of them drove back to Abuja. David was in the garden, watering the roses, when the car rolled in. He turned, wondering why Ada was back so early from Kaduna. Then he saw the boy step out, holding Clara's hand. David's watering can slipped and clattered on the tiles. The boy looked exactly like childhood pictures of himself. Clara could not speak. She only pushed the boy forward gently. David knelt slowly, eyes searching the small face. The boy whispered, "Daddy." David's voice broke. He opened his arms and the child ran into them. Behind them, Ada and Clara stood side by side, holding each other, watching father and son meet for the first time. That night the villa was full of tears, laughter, and too much off. David carried Daniel on his shoulders until the boy fell asleep. Mid-sentence, Clara sat on the same sofa where she once plotted murder, now holding her son's tiny shoes, unable to stop touching them to be sure it was real. Ada made hot chocolate for everyone and watched the scene with quiet wonder. Before dawn, David found Ada in the garden staring at the stars. He sat beside her. "I have a son," he whispered, still not believing it. "You have always had him," Ada answered softly. "He was just waiting for all of us to become the people worthy of raising him." David turned to her. "And you, Ada, you have been the bridge that carried every broken piece back together." She smiled through tears. 1 year later, the wedding was small, held at sunrise on the villa lawn. Only family and the children from the foundation schools. Ada wore a simple white lace. David wore the same smile he had the day he almost died, only now it reached his eyes. Daniel, now 10 and proud, walked his mother down the aisle and gave her hand to Ada with a serious face. "Take care of my daddy," he whispered. Ada kissed his forehead. "We both will." Clara stood in the front row in soft pink ankara, eyes shining, clapping the loudest when the pastor said, "You may kiss the bride." Later, during the reception, David took the microphone. "Many years ago a girl ran into my compound shouting, 'Don't enter that car, you will die.' Today I stand here, alive, married to that same girl, holding the son I never knew I had, and the woman who once wanted me dead is now family again. If that is not proof that God writes better stories than Nollywood, then I don't know what is." The crowd roared with laughter and tears. That night, under the same sky that once watched a bomb being planted, David and Ada danced slowly, while Daniel asleep on David's shoulder, Clara laughing beside them. Ada rested her head on her husband's chest and whispered the words she once screamed as a desperate stranger, "I love you. And this time, nobody is dying." David kissed her forehead and answered, "Not today, not ever again." And somewhere in the distance, the white Mercedes, now repainted sky blue and used only for school runs, sat quietly under the stars, as if it too had finally found peace. The boy who was saved, the wife who was forgiven, the homeless girl who became a queen, and the son who completed the circle, all breathing the same night air, all under one roof, all because one voice refused to stay silent on an ordinary afternoon. And somewhere in heaven, angels probably clapped and said, "See wet in kindness fit do." The end, that is only another beautiful beginning. My people, if this story touched you, tell me, could you have forgiven Clara and accepted the child? Would you have married Ada after everything? Where are you reading this from tonight? Drop your city, drop your heart. See you in the next story. Daniel Chukwumeka Jr. was now 20, tall like his father, gentle like his mother Ada, and sharp like the woman who once carried a cracked phone and saved a life. He was in his final year studying aerospace engineering at Abuja Aria, top of his class, already designing small drones that delivered medicine to villages in Zamfara, where roads had surrendered to bandits. The foundation had grown into one of the biggest in West Africa, 42 schools, 9 hospitals, a university scholarship scheme that carried Ada's maiden name, the Dirty Feet Scholarship, because, as she loved to say, Clara's Second Dawn Bakery now had 30 branches across the north and east. She was called Mama Mercy everywhere she went. Every Christmas she loaded trucks with bread and drove herself to prisons, sharing loaves and testimonies with women who wore the same brown uniform she once wore. She never missed a Sunday in church. Her voice was the loudest in the choir, singing redemption songs like someone who truly understood the lyrics. David and Ada added 2 more children to the family. Miracle, a girl with Ada's quiet fire, 8 years old and already correcting her teachers on financial statements, and David Jr., 6 years old, who believed his father's old Mercedes could fly because Daddy said it once, carried angels. Then came the phone call that brought the past rushing back like floodwater. It was a Tuesday evening in November. Ada was in the kitchen teaching Miracle how to make masa when her phone rang. Unknown number. She picked up. A weak voice, familiar yet strange, crackled through the speaker. "Ada, it's Victor." Her blood froze. Victor, the man who died in prison, or so they thought. She put the phone on speaker and called David with her eyes. Victor spoke slowly, each word costing him strength. "I didn't die. They moved me to a hospital wing in a Nugu prison when I got tuberculosis. I have weeks left, maybe days. There is something I must tell you before I go." David and Ada looked at each other for a long moment. Forgiveness had been given, but trust, that was different. Yet something in Victor's voice sounded like a man finally free of lies. They flew to Enugu the next morning. Daniel insisted on coming. "I want to look the man in the eye who once wanted my father dead," he said quietly. 20 years old and already carrying the weight of the story. The prison hospital smelled of bleach and regret. Victor lay on a narrow bed, skin clinging to bones, eyes sunken but clear. He could not sit up, so he spoke lying down. "I have no right to ask forgiveness," he began, "but I must tell you the whole truth before I leave this place." He told them things they never knew, that Sandra Clara had not been the mastermind. But the real poison came from David's own elder brother, Emedulus, bitter, passed over when their father left the small family transport business to David decades ago. Emma had fed Victor money for years, waiting for the right moment. When David's company went public and became worth billions, Emma decided waiting was over. He threatened Victor's family, promised him shares, and used Clara's greed as the perfect cover. "Clara thought it was just the two of us," Victor whispered. "She never knew your brother was the one pulling strings from London." David's hands clenched. Emma, the brother who sent condolence messages when the bomb was discovered. The brother who attended every Thanksgiving service, acting broken that someone tried to kill my only brother. Victor reached under his pillow with trembling fingers and pulled out a small flash drive wrapped in polythene. "Everything is here," he rasped. "Emails, voice notes, bank transfers from Emma's account in London to mine. I kept them all these years because one day I wanted to be clean before God." He looked at Daniel. "Young man, I once agreed to orphan you before you were born." Daniel stared for a long time, then slowly reached out and covered Victor's thin hand with his own. "Go in peace, sir," he said. The room was silent except for the beeping machines. Victor died 2 hours later, clutching the flash drive like a ticket to mercy. They buried him quietly 3 days later. Ada placed a single white rose on the grave and whispered, "Rest. The truth is finally free." Back in Abuja, the police moved fast. Emma was arrested at his mansion in London by the Metropolitan Police, fighting and denying until they played the evidence in the interrogation room. He broke down and confessed everything on camera. The extradition was swift. On the day Emma was flown into Abuja in handcuffs, reporters camped outside the airport for hours. David did not go to receive him. He sent Clara. Emma stepped off the plane, thinner, defeated, and saw his former sister-in-law waiting with 2 police officers. Clara looked at him for a long time, then spoke softly so only he could hear. "You used my foolishness to try to destroy the only real family I ever had. But look, God turned my mess into mercy, and yours into handcuffs. Repent, Emma. It's never too late until the last breath." Emma got life imprisonment with no parole. The judge cited cold, calculated evil spanning decades. That Christmas, the entire family gathered in the Villa Larger now, louder, fuller. Daniel brought his girlfriend, a medical student from Meduguri, who laughed like sunrise. Miracle and David Jr. fought over who got to sit on Ada's lap. Clara arrived with 10 apprentices from her bakery, all of them carrying trays of fresh bread and beaming like they had won lottery. After dinner, David gathered everyone in the garden where the old white Mercedes, now sky blue and still used for school runs, sat under fairy lights. He raised a glass of Chapman. "To every person in this garden," he said, voice thick. "To the wife who tried to kill me and now bakes bread for prisoners. To the brother who tried to steal my life and now sleeps behind bars. To the man who planted the bomb and died carrying truth to his grave. To the son I never knew I had until mercy brought him home. And to my wife," he turned to Ada, eyes shining, "the barefoot girl who ran into my compound shouting, 'Don't enter that car. You didn't just save my life that day, you saved all of us.'" He raised his glass higher. "Never forget, The loudest miracles sometimes wear torn wrappers and speak with cracked voices. Everyone cheered, children laughing, Clara crying happy tears, Daniel lifting his little brother high, and somewhere in the night sky above Abuja, the stars blinked like they, too, remembered the afternoon everything almost ended, and how love, louder than any explosion, refused to let it. The story never really ends. It only grows new chapters, new children, new bread, new mercy. And under that same garden tree, Ada rested her head on David's shoulder and whispered the line that started everything, now soft and playful, "Don't enter that car. Enter my heart instead. You'll live forever." David laughed, kissed her slowly, and answered, "I already did. And look, we're still exploding, with love, the end that keeps blooming." If this story made you cry, laugh, or shout, "A God," could you forgive a brother who paid to have you killed? Would you let Clara bake bread in your house every Christmas? Where are you reading this from tonight? Abuja, Lagos, London, Toronto, Jos? Drop your location and one lesson this story taught you.